Welcome everybody, good afternoon. It's wonderful to be here on Environment Day. It's World Environment Day today, and I can't think of a better panel on this particular day. From Aravallis to the Nicobar, on the edge of ecology, and right now I think this particular summer we've seen heat waves. We're going to soon be facing floods as well. Bengaluru here has seen unnaturally high temperatures. Then you had a very deadly hailstorm in which people died. So the impact of ignoring the environment and not protecting it enough is, we're living it right now. I think there can't be any clearer example of that. And that's why these sort of conversations are absolutely important, because we see every time it comes to protecting the environment or development, it's always the environment that loses out in that sort of fight or discussion. So I'd like to start with you, Jairam Ramesh, somebody who I've known from the time he was Environment Minister of the country. When you've often said that ecology and development need to be seen together. When we talk economy, ecology, we need to talk of both of them together. But when we talk about the Aravallis, a degraded mountain range from which we are extracting, and it's a mountain, one of the oldest mountain ranges that is actually protecting the North India from getting desertification. And then, of course, Nicobar Island, that's something the Congress has picked up in a very big way. Are we continuing to make those same mistakes?
Well, it's not the Congress that's picked up. It's
well, of late, even today.
Let's keep this discussion
yes, of course,
on the environment and not on politics. First of all, let me say that it's very appropriate that we are discussing on World Environment Day. This was a day on which the first UN conference on the human environment took place in Stockholm in June of 1972. And I would like to recall, there was only one Prime Minister who addressed that World Conference, and that was the Indian Prime Minister. And she made that famous speech of hers on environment and development. We've come a long way since 1972. We have laws to protect the environment. We have institutions to protect the environment. We have regulations to protect the environment. But in the last 40 years, we've also seen air pollution, water pollution, chemical contamination, loss of habitats. While we have made rapid economic progress, sadly, the ecological balance has got disturbed. So I think we are now have to go through a process of rediscovering what perhaps we knew many years ago, which is that development and environment have to go hand in hand. But going hand in hand means making difficult choices. You have to make choices. There are certain situations where you will have to give your go-ahead for development, because jobs are involved, investments are involved, urbanization is involved. However, there may be instances, and there are instances, where you have to say, no, we will protect the environment at all costs. And the examples that you have given, Aravalli, whether it's Nicobar, coal mining in the forest areas, because Gargi, the one change that has taken place in the last 40 years, which we didn't know 40 years ago, but which is now very obvious, that environment has a public health impact.
Yes.
So we are seeing the impact of air pollution. We are seeing the impact of water pollution. We are seeing the impact of deforestation on our health, on our livelihoods. And I think that's what must make us much more active in searching for this balance.
Absolutely. And Dr. Karath, I want to bring you in here. And as somebody, NDTV, we've always reported very extensively on environment. I was one of the first to start reporting on the air pollution crisis in Delhi. And that time, even within office, it was a struggle to get that story on air. Of course, things have changed now, and that's been a very welcome change. But once again, coming to this battle between, which it shouldn't be, but ecology and the economy and development, often we see ecology suffers. In your experience as someone who's worked in many of these areas, what would you say to this room full of people when we're talking about the Nicobar Island, when we're talking about the Aravallis, why it's so essential to save them?
So I think I want to actually broaden it beyond
Sure.
Nicobar and Aravallis. I think
They're two ends of the country and everything in between.
yeah, but India is one of the 17 megadiversity countries in the world, which means we have more non-human wildlife species present in this country than most other countries in the world. I think most Indians, we don't celebrate this country for our wildlife. We celebrate for our language, our culture, our history, and an abundance of things India has accomplished over 4,000 years. But we're forgetting that we are not the only Indians in the room. There are tigers, there are elephants, there's hornbills, there's the Narcondam hornbill, which is going to go in the Nicobar Islands. And there's a multitude of amphibians and butterflies and insects yet to be discovered. And I think it's extraordinary that we've lifted 2, 3, 400 million people out of poverty. Development is delivering for certain parts of India. I work in large parts of India where there's still 800, 900 million people who need basic necessities met, and when you go up to them and say, save that tree or save that tiger, it comes from a very urban, almost elitist perspective of why we need to save non-human Indians. And for me, today we're at an interesting point because we've brought wildlife back. What the British left us to what we have today, we've actually succeeded in Karnataka, in Madhya Pradesh, in Maharashtra, just to name a few states where we have more wildlife today than we had post-independence. But there are large parts of India that are in deep trouble. The Great Indian Bustard is going to go in our lifetime. There's less than 50 of these gigantic birds that span the Deccan Plateau left, right? So at what point are we going to sit there and figure out there are going to be really hard trade-offs on where the yeses are going to be and where the nos are going to be? And I'm afraid, as much as I'm an optimist on a lot of this, is that there's going to be a lot more nos, and we're going to see wild India go extinct in the next 20, 30 years. And Vikshit Bharat to me means tigers have to be around, elephants have to be around, hornbills have to be around.
I'm so glad you spoke about our achievements because it's absolutely true. There's a lot we have to celebrate. We have 58 tiger reserves and various other sanctuaries and, and other protected areas. And we're going to talk more about that. But coming back to what you had said earlier, and you said about the yes and the no's, and I remember very famously Jairam Ramesh used to have the go areas and the no-go areas when he was environment minister. But I do remember Jairam Ramesh, being in your office some 2010, and that was a time, ladies and gentlemen, when you could still go to the minister's office and still confront them and ask those difficult questions. Seems a long time ago, but yes, I do remember that time when we confronted you about the POSCO project in Odisha, and it was a South Korean company that wanted to come and mine steel and build a port, and there was massive, protests in the area. It would have also meant cutting down of a lot of forests. And at that time, Jairam Ramesh, what you told us, or you told me, was that this is a part of our Look East policy. And that seemed to imply that, yes, your concerns are valid. However, there is a higher concern there that we are now looking at. Of course, POSCO, eventually the company withdrew that project. So now when we talk about, let's say, the Nicobar Island, and we talk about this project there, which the government tells us is only 2% of the entire Andaman-Nicobar archipelago, area, the fact that it's going to be very strategic. The Chinese ambassador is gone, but it's going to also help us put some pressure on China to have a port there. This is what the arguments are for that. So if this were to, what would your points be opposing that?
Let me say
countering
that I share Kriti's both passion as well as concern. We have very good success stories of conservation.
Yes, we do.
Which we have achieved with great difficulty. And it's not an achievement of governments alone. It's the achievement of professionals. It's an achievement of activists. It's an achievement of civil society organizations. So it's a collective success. So we have good success stories of conservation program. However, just as we have successes, we also have increasing threats. And large parts of central India, which is the rich forest bowl of India, so to speak, this is under threat. Forest areas that should never be deforested are being just simply cleared of trees. Nicobar, you mentioned, It's a unique biodiversity spot. It's a unique ecosystem. And to think that you can deforest in Nicobar and manage its ecological impact by doing some compensatory afforestation in Haryana, this is a bogus argument. You know, this gives us it assuages our guilt conscience. But compensatory afforestation is no substitute for loss of natural forests. And we are seeing, whether it's in Orissa, whether it's in Jharkhand, whether it's in Madhya Pradesh, whether it is in Nicobar, you are seeing loss of forests, and not just forests. Forests is not just trees. You're seeing loss of biodiversity. And you're seeing loss of biodiversity that is known and loss of biodiversity that is unknown. Because every day, new species are being discovered in many of these habitats that I have mentioned to you. Now, what is the way out? There is no textbook solution, okay? There's no textbook I can open, like in economics, and say, this is what you need to do to manage this trade-off between environment and development. It has to be a give and take process. It has to be a democratic process. It cannot be a top-down technocratic process. And Gargi, there are many parts of India where people feel an attachment to, not just because of livelihoods, but because of their cultural traditions. Let's take the example of Niyamgiri in Odisha. Why was bauxite mining opposed in Niyamgiri? It was opposed not just because of the loss of forests, but it was opposed because the Niyamgiri hill was considered to be sacred
Yes.
to the Dongaria Konds. Now, if a community in India, and democracy ultimately is about protecting the smallest of the small, and if a particular community says that this is integral to my culture, then it is incumbent upon us to protect that culture. Because in India, unlike in many other parts of the world, when you protect nature, you also protect culture. When you protect culture, you also protect nature. Nature and culture are two sides of the same coin. Whether it's in Nicobar, whether it is in Hasde Warand, whether it's in Niyamgiri, whether it's in POSCO, please let us not forget that nature and culture are two sides of the same coin.
All right, you didn't answer that question about, the Look East policy that you said to defend POSCO
See,
at the time,
where-
and now what is being said about
Where I
But
disagree,
do want to
where I
get Dr.
disagree with Kriti, where I have to disagree, because, governments have, at times, they have certain compulsions, they have certain considerations, they have to create jobs, they need the new investments. So you cannot I don't think she's advocating that either. There are many people who would say, no, let's protect the environment first and let's worry about development later. No, that's not feasible. Wildernesses are not possible in the Indian context because of the demographic and the developmental challenges. So, in some places, in environment and development, Gargi, the lesson of my ministerial tenure, you cannot satisfy all sides. You cannot. The only policy that works is balanced dissatisfaction. If everybody is unhappy to the same extent, then you have done your job. You can't please all sides in this debate because there are choices that we have to make.
But definitely, as you said, the importance of civil society groups and, scientists and activists, I think that is something that we've seen somewhat diminish in these last couple of years. But, Dr. Karant, Jairam Ramesh spoke about the local people, and often they are left out of these conversations when we talk about development or protecting an area. Why do you think that is, and why can't we have, their voices also being brought out more prominently in terms of protecting their spaces?
No, I think local voices do come out when things have gone really bad. You realize the people or communities saving wildlife are the local voices, right? So I do think in a lot of regional media, they are featured pretty actively. Kannada papers definitely cover local voices. I think what we need to realize today, though, is that we can't make excuses for not protecting India's environment. We have the money, we have the resources, we have the smarts, particularly in this city, which I'm very proud of because it's my home city. And we have all the ways to protect the environment, whether it's clean up air and water, whether it's protect wildlife. And it is the willpower to do it against competing larger interests that's missing, right? But for me, what gives me optimism is one, there are more people in India who care for the environment and for wildlife than we've ever had in our history. And I think secondly, particularly for wildlife, it's a joint state and center portfolio. We were very lucky when Mr. Ramesh was our environment minister, but we are able to do a lot of things as a civil society organization on the ground because the Odisha government works with us, the Tamil Nadu government works with us, Maharashtra government works with us. And so other than tigers and elephants, which does go up to center, a lot of local environment political will is there to protect. And I think it is really building those state partnerships. And to me, wildlife is politically agnostic, right? It doesn't have a party, and it's a beautiful way to build a conversation with someone to bring them onto your side.
Right, but I always wonder why we can't
agree with
be...
you. I think there's great room for optimism. The activism that you see, I mean, India is a land of million cockroaches. And you know,
And much more.
these cockroaches are going to multiply.
I thought you didn't want to make this a political discussion, but...
No, cockroach is part of our biodiversity.
Of course.
They'll be there long after we're all gone. So,
Inshallah, but do tell me, you know, when you talk about politics and environment, and I've always wondered why we can't have more people, you know, coming out onto the streets. And that's why I was very happy with the Aravali case, because there was such a hue and cry at the thought that the Aravalis is going to be opened up for, you know, mining, that from students to villagers, from, you know, Delhi to Haryana to Jaipur to even Gujarat, we saw people coming out and protesting, and that was very heartening to see. And then we saw the Supreme Court take notice of that. So, you know, we often don't see political parties also getting as involved on environmental issues. As I said, in Delhi now, air pollution has become one of those issues which is thankfully spoken about more and more, though there's no solution in sight just yet. But yes, Dr. Karant, on that.
So, I mean, I think we're going to have much more of this, and it's going to come locally, right? We fought a Karnataka government to shut down Kudremukh mining company. It took more than 20 years. My father and many of his colleagues fought this, and they had 18 cases thrown at them in reverse. But Kudremukh is, if you have not been to Kudremukh and you live in Karnataka, please go. It is Karnataka's most spectacular park. You will not see many tigers and elephants, but in terms of representing the Western Ghats, it is truly, you know, incredible. And I think you're going to have local voices emerge in every city, in young people who are often excluded from these conversations, and we will start to have that more and more. And then people are going to speak up against environmental wrongs, not when it's too late, but when it's beginning.
All right, and that's why I think sessions like this by the Hindu and NDTV as well has been doing so much to create awareness on these issues. You know, Jairam Ramesh, you spoke about the, you know, rules in place, the framework and protection. Where do you think that is there any lacking over there? I know under you, I remember when the National Green Tribunal was also set up, and a lot of cases have gone directly to there. But is there something on the framework that needs to be, you know?
No, I think the framework is there. The framework of laws are there. The framework of institutions are there. The National Green Tribunal is there. The Supreme Court, you know, occasionally intervenes. For example, on the Aravalis. The Supreme Court first redefined the Aravalis, and then there was a huge public outcry. The media, civil society, everybody got in, and the Supreme Court then did a suo motu review of its own judgment and halted the redefinition of the Aravalis, which is a very positive thing. And now it's set up an expert committee. Sadly, the expert committee has a lot of experts, but the chairman is from within the government.
Yes,
so,
that's
you know,
criticism.
I mean, this is the way good intentions can sometimes get, you know, hijacked or subverted. So I'm still hopeful that the voices in the expert committee will be heard, and we will not go back and redefine the Aravalis, which will open up the Aravalis to mining, to real estate, and other such ecologically destructive activities. So frankly, we have a very progressive system in place. We have laws, we have institutions, yes, but Gopal Gandhi once remarked in some meeting that India is the only country in the world which takes great delight in passing laws and greater delight in bypassing them. That's what has happened in environment. We have very progressive laws, we have very extensive institutions, pollution control boards and so on. But I think what has happened in recent years, sadly, we are beginning to see environmental protection as a regulatory burden. We are not seeing environmental protection as a necessary prerequisite for public health.
For the future.
We are not seeing it as a prerequisite for economic growth. So, the ease of doing business mantra is overtaking all our laws, all our regulations, and if National Green Tribunal has all the powers to review and to ensure that decisions of the government are in fact in consonance with the laws. So you need people who will stand up, frankly.
Right, and also be wary of, people ascribing certain anti-national sort of labels to those fighting for environment. But I know time's up, but Dr. Karant, I'll be remiss if I don't ask you about one of the issues that really concerns me is man-animal conflict, which we've been seeing a lot, and you work on this. So just, a little word on that, because in some of the places locally, while the, park is successful and it's brimming with animals, we see too much conflict happening, and I feel we need to spend a lot more attention on that aspect as well.
So when I started working on this 20 years ago, it was very obscure. Like, why are you studying human-animal conflict instead of studying the animal, right? But 20 years later, it's become pretty much one of the key issues around wildlife, not just in India, but around the world. And I would like to say that we have solutions on the ground to resolve this that have to be based on science and data. And I think there's deep local community commitment. Even today, you go to any village in Karnataka and ask somebody, why don't you retaliate against that elephant that has come by and wiped out your crop for 6 months? The answer is these animals have a right to be here. They've been here as long as we have. And I've heard this over and over and over again in every part of rural India, something us urban Indians don't appreciate. And this is why India stands out, because we now have high densities of animals, but we have huge cultural, social tolerance for wildlife in rural India. And my worry is that if that snaps, that's when we're going to really see numbers go. Urban Indians don't make decisions that matter for tigers and elephants. Rural Indians do. And I think we have to empower rural Indians, solve conflict, which can be done, and create and take out man-eating tigers when you need to take them out. And I think that you have to make tough decisions of cases where the animal comes first or where the person comes first. But it's never a clean answer on this one.
All right. Well, on that optimistic note about, being able to resolve these issues and of us having a adequate green framework, we have to end it there. The time is up. A round of applause, please, for my panelists.
Thank you.